Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So on Thursday, I released a video giving out who I think is going to lead every single team in points, starting with who's going to have the least out of the 32 players and working our way up. And some of you guys wanted me to do this with defensemen. And also, if you're watching this, I'm probably on a cruise for this weekend, so I kind of need to prep this video. It's Thursday still when I'm filming this. I just changed my goddamn shirt. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to look at all 32 teams, who I think is going to be their leading defenseman scorer, and work our way up. Without further ado, let's get into it. And much like with the forwards, in 32nd, I am going with a member of the San Jose Sharks. I'm going to go with Jake Wallman. I'm going to have him scoring 29 points. He had 21 points in 63 games last year with the Detroit Red Wings. He's probably going to be their number one defenseman, kind of just by default. Their defense core is looking like one of the worst of recent memory. I don't think Marc-Edouard Vlasic's going to turn back the clock. So yeah, Wallman might get a decent amount of looks. Maybe he'll hit the 30-point mark. But if I could hammer, if it was Wallman versus the field compared to the other guys that I have, I would probably bet on Wallman to be the lowest team leader in the NHL. Next up at 31st, I'm going to go with Seth Jones. He had a bit of a down year scoring this year. He only had 31 points. I'm going to put him at 38 points. I think that this Chicago Blackhawks are going to be a much better offensive team overall. Seth Jones probably not going to play like 25 minutes compared to last year, but he's still probably going to be their number one, logging around 23, 24 minutes. I think the power play could be improved. Maybe Korchinski breaks out and he goes for 40 plus, but I think Seth Jones is probably the betting favorite right now, the safe pick. So as a result, I have him at 38 points. Next up, the St. Louis Blues. Justin Falk at 40 points. Again, no really offensive explosion type players in the St. Louis Blues, especially with Torrey Krug dealing with like arthritic problems. I don't know if he's going to be playing the full season. If not, I probably would have went with Krug at like 42, 43 points. But Falk in recent years have been, I believe he had 47 or 48 points one season. So maybe he can turn back the clock and be an effective number one for the St. Louis Blues. The Anaheim Ducks, Pavel Mintyukov with 45 points. This guy to start out the season, the first like 20 games, he was scoring at a solid like half a point per game pace. Maybe Olin Zellweger will become their number one offense defenseman. But right now, I'm going to bet on Mintyukov taking yet another step after a very impressive 2023-2024. And as a result, he's at 45 points. The Calgary Flames, Rasmus Andersson, in 2022, he had 50 points, then he went down to 49. Then this season, he went all the way down to 39. But heading into this season, he is going to be relied on to play a lot. Him and Mackenzie Weegar are going to have to carry the load for the most part, considering Kevin Ball is their number 3 defenseman as of right now. So Anderson is definitely more the offensive inclined one. I assume he's going to be on the number 1 power play. So I have him at 46 points. Also at 46 points is Cam York of the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he has a decent chance to break out when looking at the Philadelphia Flyers defense core. He's going to be relied on to play a decent amount. Last year, he played around 22 minutes. I think that is only going to go up. Hopefully, he's on the number 1 power play. Maybe Jamie Drysdale will be up there if he really bounces, if he can really show something in Philadelphia. But as of right now, I'm going to bet on Cam York at 46 points. We jump all the way up to 50 points, and I'm going to go with Brock Faber. I know Brock Faber had a rookie year where he had 47 points, so you'd be inclined to think that he's going to take another leap to maybe 55. I'm not going to quite go there yet, because when looking at the Minnesota Wild, he broke out in a season where Jared Spurgeon only played like 20 games. So Spurgeon's going to come back. He's going to take some of those minutes. Brock Faber's probably still going to be their number 1, but I think he's going to, again, be a very solid number 1 and finish with 50 points. Gustav Forsling at 52 points. He's put up around like 38 to 40 point pace the last 3 seasons. And with Brandon Montour out, Aaron Ekblad is hurt all the time and honestly just not that good in my opinion. I think Forsling is really going to surge as the number 1 defenseman in Florida. Not some offensive monster, but if he gets more looks on the power play and just probably plays between like around 23 minutes next season, I think he's going to break the 50-point mark. Also breaking the 50-point mark after back-to-back seasons of only 42 points is Moritz Seider for the Detroit Red Wings. It's not a make-or-break season for him, but I think it is kind of like offensively, if that makes sense. He needs to show some offensive progression, considering the fact that he, in his rookie year, had 50 points, then he was back down to 42 and 42. I know the way that he gets deployed is in tough situations, tough defensive situations, but if he's going to continue, he's probably going to sign a pretty big contract soon. He needs to step up his offensive game and get back north of the 50 50-point mark, and I think he will. I think he's going to get 53 points. Also, in the Atlantic Division, a defenseman that's going to get 53 points, in my opinion, is Mike Matheson. I know he had 62 points last year, but I think with other guys like Lane Hudson is obviously going to play a prominent offensive role from the blue line. Caden Gooley's probably going to play even more next season as he just continues to develop. So I think Mike Matheson's going to come back down just a little bit, back down to earth. Mike Matheson putting up back-to-back 60-point seasons. I personally cannot see that happening. The LA Kings, Drew Doughty, I'm going to go with 54 points. 50 points last year, still should be around there. It's going to be interesting how they deploy Brant Clark in Drew Doughty next season. Drew Doughty's still going to be the obvious number one, but maybe Doughty won't play 26 minutes a night, instead 24, 25, but still should be around that 50-point mark. Another veteran future Hall of Famer that's going to score 54 points, in my opinion, is Brett Burns. Brett Burns is an interesting case because his first year in Carolina had like 60 points. This year came back down to earth, but he's going to be relied on a decent amount for some offensive production, considering they're losing a guy like Brady Shea that had 47 points last year. So I have him in the mid-50s at 54. Jake Sanderson at 55 points. I think he's going to take a big step this season. He's going to be relied on to play a lot with Jacob Chikrin leaving, Nick Jensen in. I think Sanderson's going to be logging between 23 to 24 minutes, and he's on that number one power play in Ottawa. Similarly to the Sider, I think he's got to take a big step offensively to really prove that he is going to be a true number one. It's already potentially a true number one next season. I think that he does exactly that and puts up 55 points. Recently acquired Utah Hockey Club defenseman Mikhail Sergachev at 56 points. It's going to be interesting to see him coming off such a serious injury. This guy has scored 64 points in his career before as the number two behind Victor Hedman. I think he's going to have a solid season. He's probably going to be their number one defenseman. Him and Sean Durzi maybe splitting that a little bit, but as a result, I have him at 56 points. The Vegas Golden Knights, if Shea Theodore can stay healthy, I'd predict him to go over 60 points, but this guy can never stay healthy, so as a result, I got to have him at around 57 points. He's consistently put up like 65 to 70 point pace every single season. Just always gets hurt. The Washington Capitals, John Carlson had a bit of a down year offensively this season, only 52 points after consistently being above 60-point pace the last couple seasons. I'm going to put him at 59 points. He might not play as much compared to prior seasons, considering they brought in some pretty big names in terms of defensemen when looking at guys like Matt Roy and Jacob Chikrin. But still, I think he's gonna have a good offensive season, considering Washington actually has surrounded him, or Washington is going to be a far more talented team overall. The Seattle Kraken, although they brought in Brandon Montour, I still think Vince Dunn is going to be their number one defenseman, and he's going to score 61 points. He's broken the 60-point mark before in 2023. 2024 dealt with some injuries, but still was roughly on that pace. So I think Seattle is going to be a solid offensive team, and Dunn is still going to be their number one guy. Charlie McAvoy, 61 points as well. He's hovered around that range for a while now. Not sure he's going to get to north of 70 points, but I think 61, and if he can stay healthy, he hasn't really been able to stay healthy, I think 61 is a solid number for him. Also at 61, I got Dougie Hamilton. When healthy in 2023, the guy had 74 points. I don't think that's going to be, I think he's going to be healthy, hopefully, but compared to now when he has to deal with guys like Luke Hughes, that is such an offensive defenseman, Simone Nemec is really developing well. I think 61, and Brett Pesce as well. I think 61 is a reasonable number to expect from Dougie Hamilton next season. Morgan Riley at 64 points. This guy did have 58 points in 72 games last year, so I don't think I'm being overly high on him. He's consistently put up around 64 pace season after season, and I think the Toronto Maple Leafs should be pretty solid under their first year under Craig Berube, so I'm going with 64 points. Columbus, Zach Werenski, 65 points, 58 points in 70 games last year. I think Columbus, they can really only go up from here, so I think he's going to keep around that pace and get to 65 points. Winnipeg Jets, leading defenseman, in my opinion, will be Josh Morrissey. I know, real bold. Also at 65 points, 76 points in 2023, 2024, 69 points. I think he is going to go down a little bit this year to 65, but he has cemented himself as a legit top 10 defenseman, and I think he'll do the same next season. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I think Erik Karlsson is going to bounce back into the 60s. I have him at 66 points. The underlying numbers were still very good last year, just didn't get a lot of puck luck. The power play was absolutely horrendous. So as a result, I think he's going to have a bounce back year and go for 66 points. My guy, Noah Dobson, 70 points last year. I have him at around 68. I expect kind of more of the same. The Dallas Stars, Miro Heiskanen, 69 points. Not sure he's going to go north of 70 with the way that Thomas Harley really emerged last year. They're going to be kind of splitting some of the offensive roles. So as a result, 69 points. We jump up 5 points to 74 for Rasmus Dahlin. I think he gets back on track after only a 59-point season last year. I think he gets back into the 70s. Buffalo needs to be a highly competitive team. I think him and Tage Thompson have solid seasons. Tampa Bay Lightning, 75 points for Victor Hedman. He's overrated because he doesn't play defense anymore, but he's been around the point per game guy the last 2 seasons. And that power play, while maybe not the best in the league next year, I think is still going to be very, very elite. When looking at a guy like Adam Fox, 79 points. This guy has actually never broke the 75-point mark in his career. I think he does it next season. We're into the top 4. Roman Josi, 83 points. Last year at 85 points. Maybe won't get quite to that, even though the team should be more talented. Brady Shea is going to play a pretty sizable offensive role from the blue line. Quinn Hughes, 84 points. I don't think that he's going to go north of 90 points in back-to-back seasons. Then we got Cale Makar at 87 points. If you told me that he was fully healthy, I'd probably say 95. But with Cale Makar, you got to account for at least a 6-game injury. And then finally, you guys are going to hate me for this, I'm going to go with Evan Bouchard at 89 points. 82 points in 81 games last year. Was fantastic in the playoffs offensively. Not saying he's going to be the best defenseman in the NHL, but I think he has a decent shot at leading the entire NHL, especially because I think the Edmonton Oilers power play, even though it was top 3 last year, I think probably is going to be the best in hockey this year. They added some decent names. So Evan Bouchard as my leading NHL defenseman in points next season. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who am I way too high on? Who am I way too low on? I'll be seeing the next one.